Hickok 45 here. Good to see you this evening. While we still have the Smith & Wesson MP Sport 3, we thought we might just do a little comparison between a low-end AR and a higher-end AR. We've done that with other firearms, 1911 single actions, shotguns, and different things. And I've been a little reluctant to do it with an AR. We've talked about it, gosh, maybe a couple of years. But partly, I'm not, I started to say as expert, I'm sorry, like I'm an expert in other things, but I really don't feel as that I'm an expert, of course, in these things, even though I've owned them since 1983, before some of you were born probably. But I'm a jack of all trades. I'm proud of it, master of none, proud of it. But I like the ARs, and I've had them and fired them. And I know there is a difference, but it is a common question, why is someone so stupid they pay $1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000 for this same AR-15 that I can get for whatever, $500, $600, $700, and it works fine. You've had one for years and it's worked fine, and you see the comments, you see all over the internet about how people are just paying for the name, the brand, and that kind of thing, and they get sucked into the guns that just look pretty or whatever. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I am not going to give you all the details. I just know a few things that make them, that differentiate them a little bit. And for people especially that know even less than I do about AR-15s, maybe I can give you a little bit of an idea about why some are more expensive than others. You may not agree, you may not think they should be more expensive, or they're too expensive and there's no need for them to be that expensive or to have those things, those added features and all that, which I understand because they tend to work, right? Even any price level. But anyway, we'll talk about a few of those things. If you want more information, more in-depth information, really, really detailed, go to someone like Chris on Small Arms Solutions. He really knows this stuff and has worked on them as a gunsmith and everything, military experience. And Tim, Military Arms Channel, has carried these, in battle and in the military, and studies them and knows them, and knows probably as much about them as about anybody. But anyway, I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth. And before I do, I want to thank Bud's Gun Shop for their support of the channel. That's why we have so many firearms we're able to bring to you. Then also the Silencer Central. They do one thing really, really well, and you have seen that fine banished line here on our table and in our videos for a good while now. And then the Sonoran Desert Institute, lots of great courseware you can take there online. Drone technology, firearms technology, lots of things, lots of learning that you can achieve just through your computer screen. You can even get on the road to becoming a gunsmith, right? So appreciate their help. Now, I've got a couple here, and this is not I don't mean to make it a Daniel Defense, Smith & Wesson comparison necessarily, but that's kind of what made me think of it, because they're very similar looking. You almost can't tell, can you, right away? Of course, you can tell from the furniture, but the new Smith & Wesson Sport 3 has the free-floating barrel or shroud, not shroud, but the handguard and everything. And so you have a firearm that is more like more of the modern firearms, full-length Picatinny rail and everything. So they look a lot alike, and I happen to have the same sight on both of them. Okay, primary arms, prism scope. So yeah, they're just set up kind of the same, and let's shoot them both and talk about it. And I have some others out here that are also some higher. I've got my M&P Sport. This one on the end. This is mine. I've owned for a few years. I've never had any issues with it. That's the Sport 2. And I got another higher end gun than the Smith & Wesson. I've got the BCM. And I've got a LWRC, and I'm not going to go into detail on those at all. I just have them out to show you a couple of reasons why they are more expensive, maybe. Okay, so that's what we're going to focus on, some of the more obvious reasons that some of these cost more. Okay, what puts them into a higher price range, in case you are one of those persons thinking there's really no reason for them to be more expensive. They're all the same, you know. So anyway, let's just shoot these things. Let's take a couple of shots with, now this is the Smith & Wesson Sport 3, okay? And I got too much ammo in that mag. So we'll put the bolt back and then put that mag in. About 29 rounds, it filled her up. All right, I'm just gonna take a couple of shots here at something like a bowling, no, a 2-liter. And then a red plate over there. Plow it. You can hear when it hits. How about the gong? Yeah, I love that sound. Okay, shoots fine. Let's put a couple on the pumpkin. Oh, that doesn't save you, Mr. Pumpkin. That doesn't save you. I got the rubber on this. Oh, get that. Okay, so that's the M&P Sport, and you see you got your basic inexpensive furniture, pistol grip and stock and everything on that, but you know, it seems to shoot fine. So let's just also pick up the Daniel Defense. This is the M4 V7. Take a couple shots with it. It's set up kind of the same way. All right. This is one of my favorites. Yep. Let's shoot this pumpkin again. Yeah, he thought he was safe, didn't he? Bowling pin or two. And the gong. You can see the gong. So both nice firearms. The trigger's better on this one because I've replaced the trigger on it. It has I think I put a Geisley trigger in it. And this has just a stock trigger came with it, just kind of a mil-spec, you know, issue trigger. So, all right. Now, again, reluctant to do this because there is really there's no quicker way to stir up every online mall ninja than to start talking about AR-15s and why this one's better than that one and what you ought to have on your AR-15, that kind of thing. Of course, I'm not going to really do that because I'm not that opinionated on them. So I shouldn't really stir up anybody. It's okay if we do, because I'm just going to share what I know from what I've read, what seems to be true, what seems to be the case from listening and from reading what a lot of other more knowledgeable people had to say about AR-15s and the differences that go into making them, building them, the steel and all that kind of thing. And I'm not going to get very technical. I'm not smart enough to do that. Also want to thank, before we get into it, Alabama Holster for their support of the channel. Great little concealment holsters. They're Kydex. I use them all the time and have for many years. So thank you, Alabama Holster. Don't tell anybody, but they're in Alabama. Okay. Now, I claim not to know much about them, and it's kind of true, but I do have some experience. You know, I have owned, or still own, Colt, Wyndham Weaponry, Bushmaster, LWRC, Smith & Wesson, Colt, Daniel Defense. What did I leave out? I could keep naming them over. But I actually own those now. And John and I have tested or fired, I don't know about if review is the correct word, right? But we have had, there's no telling, if we sat down and tried to make a list, we wouldn't be able to think of them all. So we have fired a lot of AR-15s in 5.56, and we have, you know, all the ones I have. And I almost, well, I don't really remember having malfunctions with any of them. We were talking about before this. They just work. You know, whether it's an inexpensive one or an expensive one, a very expensive one, they just tend to function. You just saw those two. I had full confidence, just like picking up a Glock or a SIG or something that's going to fire. It would be really a surprise if there was some malfunction. And from low end to high end, they just tend to work, don't they? And that's the cool thing about them. The design, like an AK or something, just the design inherently lends itself to being, you know, effective. So let's talk about some differences. Like, the Smith & Wesson, the sports series is one of the low. There's others I could compare. I'm not going to get into. There's a million ARs in there. You could write 49 books on it, right? We could do a series of 4-hour videos, for the next month on AR-15s. But that's not what it's about. Just a little basic information on why some are a little pricier than others, and what are some of the things that cause that. Okay. Well, like I said, this firearm, and I saw in some of my reading and research some different people in law enforcement and talking about how their departments have these Smith & Wessons, and they're as patrol rifles, and they just have worked fine. They shoot, they train with them, they carry them. Now they don't go through maybe tens of thousands of rounds through them, but they're real happy with them. They work fine. Okay, they're good guns. Yeah, so just again to make that clear, we're not talking trash versus quality. We're talking just different levels perhaps. So why then, if this works, and it's got a free floating barrel now, your standard bird cage, flash suppressor and everything, a good barrel, why does anybody need anything different? Well, it's like anything else. Why do you need the car you're driving? Why do you buy better socks or jeans or shoes than you need, that you'd have to have, tires for your car, all these things we could compare. So a gun like the Daniel Defense, I've got a LWRC, and I'm not really knowledgeable. That's why I admit early on exactly what LWRC does in their barrels that Daniel Defense does or doesn't, that kind of thing. But I do know once you get up into 1,500 to 2,000 and beyond, then you're talking about in the barrel, we'll start with the barrel, probably better steel. Nothing wrong with this kind of, what is it, 4140 I think, steel probably, and this is like 4150, and it's chrome lined, and so just a little more attention to materials, getting the best materials, and the finish and the quality control. Quality control comes up over and over and over if you study and research what makes the difference between these things, and any firearm I guess, but ARs especially, because you got kind of they are kind of like Legos, different parts, pop them together, they work, but the materials going into it can be different, not dramatically maybe, but I was reading how one company, I forgot who it was now, Noveski or somebody, and it wasn't just them, but your higher end AR makers, they use the very best small parts, like little springs, detents, all those little things you don't think about, in the bolt or just wherever they are in the firearm, the highest quality springs. These higher end companies generally, they're building them to go to war, I don't know that Smith & Wesson, and not to trash them, that they're building this going for military adoptions, right? Well, in fact, we know they're not, because they're not even really, I guess, mil-spec in a lot of ways. Now, mil-spec used to be kind of a sacred term. Wow, that one's mil-spec, I want that one, And early on, that kind of was true, wasn't it? You were looking for a mil-spec rifle, and it still has a lot to be said for that. It's just that a lot of companies now probably would say we go way beyond mil-spec. But there are certain things that military mil-spec, military specs, military demands, or they're not going to consider it. And they do want, especially you looking at the barrel, the bulk carrier group, those really critical parts of the firearm, the steel that's in them. These are semi-automatic, or they could be full automatic, right? And a lot of banging, and firing lots of rounds quite often, unlike your average hunting rifle or something. So, and those little parts, you look at the bolt on an AR, I mean, it's kind of a small piece in a lot of ways, isn't it? You got the little fingers and everything. And so you need the best steel in that, and then it needs to be tested. And that's another difference, okay? So not that the steel is substandard in something like the Smith & Wesson or a lower end one, but from my reading, companies like Daniel Defense and companies like them, when you get up in that level, they're high pressure tested, they're shot peened, the bolts, they're magnetic particle inspected, and that's kind of like an X-ray where you can see if there's any deficiencies or defects, in the metal. I mean, they do it with the barrel too. I think they high pressure test it, they magnetic particle inspect it to make sure that barrel is of the highest quality. And some companies do that and they advertise it, as I understand. And you all chime in, some of you that know more about it, make if you can, the comment section really educational, because I'm just kind of throwing a lot of this out there, and some of you that know more specifics, let people know about certain brands or whatever, if you're sure about it, right? But from what I have read, some companies, and I don't know, maybe Smith & Wesson and other lower end companies, they do the magnetic particle testing and high pressure testing, all that kind of thing, but they don't necessarily do every single bolt or every single barrel. There's sort of, maybe it's 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100 or whatever, and in batches. And if they find one that, that one had a problem, well, then maybe they go back and look at all those last 10 or 20 or whatever it might be. But whereas your higher end companies, they will, like I think Daniel Defense, correct me if I'm wrong, they test every single bolt in every single barrel like that, that kind of thing. And I'm sure that other companies do as well. They have military contracts. They're famous for their barrels. I've seen so many people who really know ARs talk about how just get you a Daniel Defense barrel, you're good to go, that kind of thing. The quality control, the testing is just incredible. Okay, those are things you don't necessarily see. Like if you look at this barrel, like me, I look at this barrel, I look at that barrel. Other than this one, I think is closer to it's more the mil spec contour than the Smith & Wesson. I don't know. They're both great. Well, maybe they're not quite equal. You got chrome lining and just different things. It might be different. And again, the inspection of each one. Now you might shoot both these firearms 20,000 times and not notice any difference, but then again, because of the quality control and the testing of every barrel and every bolt and that kind of thing, you're more likely not to have a problem, right? So that's one of the things that's big, that bolt carrier group. And this is a bolt carrier group from the BCM. They're also famous, BCM, for the testing of all their bolts and everything. And like it says right on that one, HP for high pressure testing, MP for magnetic particle testing. I mean, they have a reputation for being like the ultimate in mil spec and meeting those requirements. And the more I read, the more impressed I am with BCM. I see why Tim likes them so much from the Military Arms Channel. Impressive. So that bolt carrier group being built right and being staked properly. This gas key, how it is staked. You see, that's the BCM, and it's really staked there, so it's not going to get loose on you. If you look at some others, the Smith & Wesson's okay. It's not staked as I guess dramatically as that. Just those little things, can make a difference. Okay, plus the steel and everything that's used in it. Some of the obvious things, you can just look at it. Why would it be more expensive? Well, look at the stock. And you got this over molded, this rubber, that is a nice stock. It feels good. The pistol grip, nothing you have to have, right? But they cost more, adds to the cost. On the bolt, I was going to say, like on the mil spec, you got a 158 Carpenter steel if it's mil spec, and some of the other bolts are like 9310 or something metal, which is fine, but it's just not the Carpenter 158. Those are things that add some cost to the firearm. It's just that simple. Now, what else that's on the exterior that you might see real obvious? Now, I have replaced, let's see, on mine, I put, what's this, the Gunfighters, charging handle on this one. I forget what exactly the one that came with it looked like. Some come with sights, some don't. That's going to add to it, right? The finish can be different, obviously, and that can add to the cost. The hand guard is a big factor. Of course, Daniel Defense is famous for their great hand guards. Was it the RIS-2 that was adopted by the military, and even the way they're fastened. You see how that and I'm just using Daniel Defense most as an example. How that thing is bolted and screwed to that. That's pretty nice. And then the aluminum, aircraft grade aluminum, 7075. T6, I mean, those things that are kind of standards, mil spec, that are used in your nice rifles. Small parts, like I say, and then of course the reason I brought this LWRC out, it's high end, and I'm not sure what all they do that the others don't do. I know they put them out with, they don't have very good quality control in the barrels, right? They somehow get twisted. Same old joke. But they do that. That's supposed to, that fluting is supposed to help them cool off, I think, more quickly, and maybe add strength to the barrel, that kind of thing. Plus, mainly it just looks cool, right? And this is a gas gun, but it's a very nice one. I was like, oh yeah, the thing I was going to point out that also adds cost to a firearm. One reason the LWRC is higher end, costs more, is all that. But then also, you got ambi controls. So you got ambi all the way around, and on your lock, your bolt lock there, you got it on both sides, and your mag release both sides, and so totally ambi. And those are the kinds of things that add to the cost. That's the reason when you go and look at a rack of ARs, you're trying to pick one out, and one, it might be 7 or 8, and another one is 2,000 or 2,500. And one thing many people may, if you're younger, may not be aware of too. I sound like an apologist for these companies charging so much for certain firearms, but I just understand how business works. When you get to a certain level, there's a point of diminishing returns, right? On anything that's being built, with a tire or a rifle or anything. And from what I gather, the general opinion is when you get an AR up to about, I don't know, 1,200, 1,400, beyond that, you've got a nice firearm when you get to that point. And I guess you're talking in the category BCM, you can do a really good job. But then beyond that, to make it higher quality or do more for it, it just costs a lot more, maybe more inspections and just whatever it is. You can add to the quality in small amounts, and it costs a lot to add more quality once you get to that point. So you might look at a $3,000 AR, wow, who'd pay that? It's not twice as good as this one, even though it's twice as much money. Well, that's it. It would not necessarily be twice as good, because maybe to get something 10% better actually costs another 50 or 100%. So that's just a rule, kind of economics on that. And then again, I'm not saying just because something is built better, a little better, that it is worth what someone's charging for it. Even though the LWRC, nobody would argue that it or the Daniel Defense, they're really nice guns, but you still might think they're overpriced. That's okay. That maybe one of them is, I don't know, but there is a reason it costs more. That's the main point. There is a reason it costs more. And I need to shoot this one a little bit more, okay? Just prove that it works, okay? So, and it's kind of that way with almost any product. You got lower end on anything, higher end, and it could be the higher end. It probably is in almost every case. The higher end is a little better in some ways, but now that doesn't mean it's still that it's priced correctly. We can still disagree with how much they're charging for it, but let's at least agree it has something about it that makes it a higher quality. Might not be a lot. Okay, let's put one on the paper. Have we done that yet? Yeah, right in the red. Let's go back over there. Oh, I took my pad off. Bro, nice sound. That's a nice sound. Oh, I see a bottle of water right here. Pop it. Yeah, last round got an orange 2-liter. So that firearm would serve everybody just very, very well. It's again, I'm not trying to promote any of these, but it's considered low end, the S&W, but it works, and it's worked for a lot of people, and probably for a lot of you, is my guess, right? It's just got what it needs. You could nitpick it and compare the steel with the steel in the barrel of the Daniel Defense, for example, or even the Contour, and say that that's got a better barrel because it's been inspected, every single one of them perhaps. But this thing is likely going to work and fire thousands and thousands of rounds. And one of the last things is, again, an AR is kind of it's an interesting situation, really. One thing you hear, and I've read and heard so many sources, that this is really all you need. You know, one like this level is probably all most of us need. The vast majority of us really need. We're just fine with this. It works, and it's got what you need. We're not going to Afghanistan tomorrow, Iraq, or anywhere like that, probably. And it would still be good for thousands of rounds anyway. So yeah, it's fine. That's all you need. You don't need to be spending $1,500, $2,000 or more on an AR. The problem with that is a lot of us don't want to hear that, right? I'm gonna get a little philosophical now. We don't like to hear that, because many of us, if we can afford it at all, we kind of like to know we've got something that will maybe surpass our needs, especially in a tool or a firearm. There's a lot of tools we could buy that we can get by with, but if we have the budget for it, well, we don't mind spending a little more for that tool, right? To know it'll take the stress, it's going to last longer, or I'm never going to have any problems with that, or whatever the case might be. So I think that's kind of what we have with an AR. I'm an example. I've got a Daniel Defense. Do I need a Daniel Defense? Military grade AR. Again, I'm not going overseas to fight, I hope, anytime soon. But there's just something that is attractive in it too, and we're that way with a lot of things, right? Pocket knife or whatever. We don't mind having something that kind of surpasses the specs that we really need, quote unquote. And so that's the reason some people pay more for an AR, and you might not understand it, or for anything, right? So don't give people a hard time for buying a $2,000 AR, or a $3,000 AR, or a $100,000 car, or a $300,000 car. Yeah, that's not what they want. Fine. It's not. And one of the bottom line here, and I'll let you go maybe. The bottom line is, you're not just paying for the name. Okay, if you get a Daniel Defense or an LWRC, a BC, name any of them, Noveske, gosh, there's a lot of good LMT, we could name them all day long, the higher end ARs. And you're not just paying for the name. What is a name? How does a product get a name? How does Mercedes get a name? Or Volvo, or Camry, or whatever you want to name, a brand of shoe, a pocket knife. Where does that name, where does that brand, why does that brand mean anything? And all brands do mean something, don't they? Well, they get their meaning from experience, right? And many brands don't have a name that is associated with quality, and some do. And the reason they do, a lot of people have had good experiences with them. That's where that comes from. So there is something in a name. Yeah, you're right. You're just paying for a name. Yeah, you are. You're paying for the name. You betcha. You're paying for it because that name, that brand has been proven. Okay? So we could probably have a drinking game here and look down in the comments, and if you took a drink, every time you see somebody say, oh, you're just paying for the name or the brand, we'd all be drunk, right? But that will happen. I've seen it already too many times. So, like I said, you are paying for the brand. The brand does mean something. Doesn't mean that we couldn't all agree, well, maybe they're overpricing their brand. They've got a great brand and they make a great product, but it's still a little too expensive. So we can all agree on that, can't we? So anyway, I don't know if that's any help to you, but for folks who are just kind of new to it and you're trying to decide on an AR-15, yeah, bottom line is There is a little difference, sometimes quite a bit of difference. A lot of it's cosmetic, you know, in the furniture. Some of it's in steel and you know, the pieces and quality control, customer service and all that. But by and large, this design has been around long enough. It's like the 1911 or the Glock, you know, patents have run out on a lot of those too and everything. And the design just works. So you're not likely to have trouble with your AR if it's a Smith & Wesson or a low-end Ruger or whatever. So get one you want, one you can afford, and just enjoy it. Life is good.
Oh yeah, that's better. This is a great gun for defense. Oh hey, didn't see you guys there. While I've got you here, I want to remind you of our friends over at Talon Grips and Ballistol. Talon Grips makes grips, can you believe it, for all different types of firearms. You can get rough texture or more of a rubberized texture. It just sticks right on there. You know, really affordable, really cool option to improve the grip for your handguns or rifles. So please check them out at talongungrips.com. You'll be glad you did. And also Ballistol. Dad has been using Ballistol for many years. It's a cleaner and a lubricant, and it's non-toxic. It works really great, and we're happy to have them on board since it's been a part of our shooting endeavor for a very long time. So go to ballistol.com, talongungrips.com. And also, while you're out there, I'm juggling all these things here. Also, while you're on the internet, please do check out our other social media like Hickok45 on Facebook. There's also Hickok45 on Twitter, The Real Hickok45 on Instagram. There's a John_Hickok45 on Instagram where I do some things. There's Hickok45.com. You can find us also on Gunstreamer. So check out all that stuff and then watch more videos.